Good morning. I hope you have been able to access our second video on structures which we posted on YouTube, and I hope you are able to watch these videos and you are able to learn something from these videos. I hope you have been able to get yourselves, download yourselves this book. This book is called Sasol Alo. It's meant for grade 7 learners who are doing technology as one of the lessons, and I hope you have started reading that book. That book will help you very much during this difficult time of coronavirus. I also hope that you have all the necessary things to protect yourself from the access of coronavirus, like a mask and like a hand sanitizer. As I've introduced myself, I'm Mr. Ngozi. I teach technology at Nkululeko Higher Primary, Danzane Township, NU1 in East London in the Eastern Cape. And I hope my videos will help a lot of you, whether you are not studying in Nkululeko, but if you are doing grade 7, the same content that I'm covering would have been the same content that would have been covered by your teacher. Last week we spoke about structures, and we gave a clear definition of a structure, that a structure is anything which is around you and that is constructed from a variety of parts that are held together to make one object. And we gave the types of structures that we have in terms of frame structures, shell structures, and solid structures. We gave examples for each type, where we said frame structures will range from chairs, from bicycles, because the function of shell structures, of frame structures, is to support the load. So the bicycle supports you as a load when you are using it. So all the frame structures, they are meant to support load. Some are meant to span the cabs, and all the other examples that you listed as I asked you to. And then shell structures, we gave an example of an egg. We said the outside of an egg is a shell, because a shell structure is marked by its ability to protect what is inside, and what is inside an egg is called an egg yolk, and which must be protected from damage. The moment you break the egg yolk will come out, and the function of the shell structure will no longer hold. So the shell structure is meant to support what is. We went on to a solid structure, where we said it is marked by particles which are closely packed and are rigid and strong, and an object that can be used to build the frame structures. Now today we are focusing on classification of structures. How do we classify structures? Because we said in definition, structures can be made or can be created. Some can be naturally made, and some can be created by people, or vice versa. So how do we then classify these structures? Structures can be classified in terms of whether they are man-made or whether they are natural created. So we have got two forms of structures in terms of their classification. We classify structures in terms of whether they are man-made or in terms of whether they are natural structures. How do we see the structures which are man-made? The examples of the frame structures that we gave in our previous lesson, such as a chair is not a natural structure. A chair is a man-made structure. So you should be able to take a particular structure and you should be able to know whether this particular structure falls within the shell, the frame, or the solid, and you should be able to know whether this particular structure is man-made or is a natural structure. So the chair is a frame structure which falls within the classification of man-made structures. So you should be able to make that kind of differentiation between those structures. You can also give other examples of man-made structures, such as a bicycle. A bicycle is a good example of a frame structure which is also man-made. And then we move on to another man-made structure which is a frame structure, such as a table. We are able to put some things on top of the table which can be seen as a load, and that table is able to support those things. So a table will be a good example of the man-made structures. But you must bear in mind that it's not always the case that frame structures will be man-made. There are frame structures which can be natural. For example, if you see what is called a spider web, that spider web is a frame structure, because when a spider is seated on top of a spider web, it becomes a load, and that spider web must support its load. But that spider web is not man-made. That spider web is what? Is a natural structure. I hope we are together so far. And then we move to natural structures in terms of whether they are shell structures or frame structures or solid structures. For an example, you will have a shell structure which is natural. For instance, an egg is a good example of a natural structure which is not man-made. It's natural, but it's not man-made. No one can say, I have collected an egg yolk and then I've made a shell structure and then I've made an egg. So a shell structure such as an egg is naturally made. Even a snail is naturally made because there is a shell structure on top of a snail in which it rolls itself inside it during the time in which the snail is threatened. And then you should be able to list all the things that you think are structures, and you should be able to classify them in terms of whether they are natural structures or they are man-made structures. A big rock is a good example of what? Of a solid structure. But when we look in terms of their classification, it falls under the natural structures. And then you take a brick. A brick is a man-made structure which falls under solid structures. It's a solid structure, but in terms of classification, we can say it's man-made. Are we together so far? So we should be able to classify the structures in terms of whether they are natural or they are man-made, and you should be able to know whether a structure is solid, whether a structure is shell, or whether a structure is frame. And I hope we have been together during this lesson. I hope we will meet again during our next lesson. In our next lesson, we will be investigating specifically how the frame structures are made. You will remember I made mention of the fact that there is a lot of framework in a frame structure which helps to make it to be very strong. So in our next lesson, we will be discussing that how those frame structures are made. That brings us to the end of today's lesson, and I hope you will be able to access this lesson and will be able to move forward, learn from these videos during this difficult time of coronavirus. Thank you very much.